Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 5, Episode 35. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our very special guest in this episode, recorded live in person at the Seattle Food Innovation Show in Toronto, is Gilles Froment, Senior Vice President, Government Industry Relations for Lactalis and President of the International Dairy Federation, the IDF, who is the leading source of scientific and technical expertise for all stakeholders in the dairy chain. Since 1903, global organization. We get something different for the people today because this is the first in our podcast in 5 years, hundreds of episodes. You got to play both producer and host. So this is a solo interview with you and Gilles. And I have to say, Sylvain, I'm not sure you started out, CL, thinking you'd be doing a solo interview with someone in the dairy industry.
Well, first of all, I was honored, pleased that Gilles accepted our invitation. I believe he's only the third Canadian to actually head the IDF, which is an accomplishment. So he's well known, widely respected in the industry on both sides of the dairy equation, processing and production. So we had a great chat, and to be honest, we could have chatted forever. I mean, we were on, and people will actually listen to our conversation. It's kind of weird to actually listen to two French guys speaking English, but hey, it's an English podcast. But we could have actually gone on forever.
Yeah, fantastic. I've had to listen to it, and it is a great interview. You're a great interviewer, so you know I can take the rest of the day off.
Well, I mean, I can't. I wouldn't say that I'm as good as you are, but I'm getting there. I'm learning from the best. The best.
You sound and look a little bit different. It looks like you're in a hotel room. Where are you?
Yeah, actually, I'm in Alcatraz. I'm just kidding. Because apparently we want to reopen it.
It's a great vacation spot or someplace to put illegal aliens, I guess.
Exactly. No, I'm in beautiful Saskatoon today. It's 26 degrees.
Beautiful.
And I was speaking. I was keynoting an event this morning to businesses in Saskatoon. Actually, lots of retail businesses. They're just looking at AI as an opportunity, and they wanted to learn more. And they actually wanted someone to talk about AI in the food business.
Oh, okay.
So they flew me in and spoke to them. I actually tried to get there early in the morning so I can meet some folks, which I did. Because typically, I don't know about you, when I speak on stage, I literally show up like 15 minutes before, to be honest, because I don't want to bother people. But this time I actually went in first thing in the morning, had breakfast with folks, listened to a couple of speakers, and then just before lunch it was me.
Great. How's the vibe in Saskatoon? I love Saskatoon, by the way.
It's you mean the political vibe or just generally speaking?
Well, you could answer that question first, and then kind of the business vibe. How are people feeling with all the tariff stuff and all that stuff, and the global, the global geopolitical stuff? Because they're bullseye center with some of their exports, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, politically, obviously, in light of what happened last week, most people here aren't pleased with the outcome. But and it was raised during the Q&A. I mean, I basically said, listen. This is a democracy. We have to respect results, and I do think it's important to support the Prime Minister. I think everyone wants the Prime Minister to be successful domestically and internationally. I mean, the fate of our nation actually depends on it. So that was kind of my message to them. I think it's important to really focus on the future.
Well, I think I heard. I can't validate this, but I heard on one of my favorite podcasts, The Curse of Politics, that it's come out that Trudeau hadn't called Premier Moe in years, like they hadn't spoken in years. So it's no wonder people out west are feeling, somewhat detached. So let's just hope Prime Minister Carney, being a Westerner himself, can kind of feel that alienation. I mean,
well, it's funny because when you actually look at Pierre Poilievre, he never spoke to Doug Ford until the election. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of interesting.
Well, so speaking of travel and being on the road, you, my friend, have an announcement to make about where you're going to be spending more time. Talk about it.
Well, listen, the cat was in the bag for a long time, and you know this, Michael. I was actually asked to consider an opportunity abroad last year, actually, back in the fall, and accepted a new position for a while, and it was actually official months ago, but I hesitated to mention anything because of what was going on with the United States, because it is in the United States, and I'm pleased. I mean, at first, I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't looking for an opportunity. It just came to me, and of course, I have a good friend at Texas A&M, Simon Samoji, who I've actually worked with for many years. He sent me this opportunity, and thought, well, maybe this is time to shuffle things a little bit career-wise, and starting August 1st, I'll be joining Texas A&M, which is one of the top ag schools in the world, and I was asked to direct, to lead their Masters in Agribusiness program, which is ranked number 1 in the country and number 3 in the world. And so, and of course, I'll be also supporting the PhD program in agribusiness as well. So it's a great opportunity, and frankly, like I said, I'm not leaving Canada. I'm going to continue to pay taxes in Canada. I'm going to be working
associated with Dow, right? You're still associated with Dow.
Exactly. I'm going to be working like 8 months a year, and I still keep my position at Dow. The lab will continue to work. I'll continue to be involved with media in Canada, write op-eds for both Post Media and La Presse as well. So that's not going to change. What is going to change is that I'll be spending way more time in Texas, understanding the food economy there, which, by the way, just Texas, it's 6 times the size. The agri-food sector is 6 times the size of Canada, so lots to learn there for sure.
Well, I'm excited for you, my friend. As you said, I've known for a little bit. I'm excited for the podcast as well, because you'll be able to bring from your experience. We should say, we're going to continue doing the Food Professor podcast. In addition to your articles, but you'll be able to, we'll probably talk a little bit more about what's happening in the States and lessons learned, right? Because there's a lot of lessons to be learned from an agricultural system as big as it is at Texas A&M. And by the way, I looked it up. I didn't know what A&M stood for. It's agricultural and mechanical.
Mechanical, yeah. It started as an engineering school with ag.
Big university, right? Like, how many people go to that university? It's one of the biggest universities.
It's 75 to 80,000, yeah. It has the 6th largest stadium in the world. for literally 8 nights, 8 days a year. I mean, it's 110,000 people. It's just, and it had its own airport, 2 baseball fields. I mean, it's just, when you go there, you can feel that finances aren't an issue.
and what's the name of the city? Because I think it's close to, it's funny how my podcast partners, Steve Dennis on Remarkable Retail's in Dallas, you're kind of
That's between, right. I'm going to be like an hour away from Dennis.
That's right. You're going to be between
Steve, yeah.
From Steve, yeah. I mean, you're kind of. What's the name of the city? Just to
It's College Station. So College Station has its own airport. It's basically a city built for Texas A&M. Essentially, and so it's about 250,000 people. It's in between Dallas, Houston, and Austin.
And Austin, yeah, that's right. It's quite kind of, you can go from any of those places, and it's about the same amount of time.
Yeah, and it's less than 2 hours away from the Mexican border, so it's getting close.
Well, I was going to say, I just need a third podcast with a host in El Paso, and I'll pretty much cover the entire state of Texas. So
that's right, exactly. I'm pretty excited, to be honest, because I'm 55. I think it's a great opportunity to learn more, and I just want to be clear here with our audience. I'm not leaving Canada because of the election. It was something that was brewing for a while, and this is more about the career. It's also about my family, because I think it's going to be a nice experience for our family as well.
And it's not if the listeners have been listening for a while, they would know that you've been posted in several places around the world. This is the life of a senior academic, right? You've been in.
Yeah, I've been visiting scholar. I've been a visiting scholar teaching. So I've taught in China, in Brazil, in Austria, in Finland, in the U.S. several times, in most provinces, actually. So this is kind of what we do, right? But this one's hard to say no. So yeah, because I mean it's a top school. I mean,
Exciting.
if you get a phone call from either Cornell, Purdue, or Texas A&M from the United States, you take the call.
Fantastic. Well, not only big resources, but also just great prestige. So once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Be hearing a bit of a Texas accent coming out of you.
You're a bit of a Texas fan, so I'm looking forward to hosting you in Texas once in a while.
It gives me another excuse to go to Texas. I love Texans. I love the barbecue scene, of course, and I've got to know them well, going down there multiple times. So it's a different place. Like they've got their own culture, city to city.
And my signature for the podcast will likely change. Instead of saying "take care," I'm probably going to say "Howdy."
Howdy. We're going to start the podcast with yippee-ki-yay. Welcome.
Yeah. Well, that's a different thing. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's get into the news. Congratulations once again on that. And let's move on to the second release, second edition of the Canadian Food Sentiment Index. So talk of, for 30 seconds, maybe, for those who haven't heard you describe what it is and who helps you present the index, and tell us a little about the index, and then tell us what you learned from this latest edition.
Well, we have a great partner in Cattle, and Cattle has provided us with great data over the years, and we were actually running a lot of surveys on different topics. And last year I thought, well, I think, a survey is a picture in time, right? You take a picture of the population about a certain issue. But I wanted more. I wanted to understand trends. I wanted to see exactly what people are thinking about a bunch of issues over time. And so that's why we created this index last fall. And of course, the first edition is always the most boring one because you're not comparing it with anything else. This is the first one. This is the first that we're actually comparing with last fall. So we can actually see exactly what's impacting Canadians at the grocery store, at the restaurant. What are they thinking about? What are they concerned about overall? How are they spending their money overall? So we create this nice dashboard for the industry showing people, well, this is where the puck is going, basically, and hopefully it will be information for everyone to use and interpret as well.
So, what did you learn in the second edition? So now you got something to index for the index.
Well, I mean, obviously, inflation is still top of mind for people. In fact, some are actually quite pessimistic. A lot of people think that we're facing double-digit inflation, which is not going to happen, to be honest. But the problem right now is that you have a food inflation rate which is above inflation, and that tends to happen. People are spooked at the grocery store because things are moving much more quickly at the grocery store compared to the rest of the economy. So that's certainly one thing that we've noticed. But really the one big thing with this report is the buy local movement. I mean, clearly people are thinking about local. When you think of the trust factor, we assess people on trust, and the entire food industry is now more trustworthy in the eyes of Canadians. But most importantly, independent grocers are the big winners there. And that's probably due to the buy local movement.
Interesting. Good news indeed. I think that's good news for the industry. I'm not exactly surprised about concerns about inflation, because you and I spoke this time last month that, overall inflation rate was down, but food inflation was up, right? The food inflation went up.
That's right.
Some of that was because of the reciprocal tariffs, for example. So a bit of I think consumers are feeling that there's a lot of tariff talk, and that's going to result in higher prices. So I'm not
exactly, and I think a lot of people are preparing for that. And of course, starting with Loblaw, I do think that Loblaw deserves some credit in acknowledging some of the challenges that they're facing internally, telling the population that
putting that tea.
The monthly reports about strategic headwinds that they're facing, very transparent, and Peer Bank actually is out there very clear about some of the challenges that they're facing as well as a company. And so, of course, some people will kill the messenger because it is, after all, Loblaw. But at the end of the day, it's important for consumers to understand out there that things aren't really easy. I mean, I don't think that this winter was easy for grocers to basically try to pivot and source food elsewhere beyond America, because America is a great source for us. It's a cheap source. So to replace America has been really incredibly difficult.
Well, and over that past couple of months, the Canadian dollar was devaluing against the American dollar. That's actually turned around, so that's good news for consumers.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Canadian dollar is stronger, and in fresh food, I mean, that matters so much, right? That whether you might not even be sourcing it from America, you would often pay in American dollars. I just want to stick with one. The one
thing,
right.
if I may, Michael, the one thing about the American dollar, which I thought was interesting, as you know, the Fed this week decided to hold its benchmark rate. I was surprised. I don't know about you, but I was surprised. It was decided actually on Wednesday, and to me, I think the Fed believes, based on the evidence provided, that the economy in America is still running pretty strong. I mean,
you look at unemployment. You look at employment number. Like, it's a funny thing, right? So maybe it's a lagging indicator versus a leading indicator, but it looks more like trouble on the horizon versus trouble today. Because there's a lot of key things that
Jerome Powell did actually acknowledge some problems lying ahead because of the tariff wars, and it's self-inflicted, so it's kind of awkward to see the board chair say, well, listen, we're basically self-sabotaging our own economy, but we actually think things are great.
Maybe it'll work out in the long run. Speaking of America, we've been talking about a lot of America so far on this episode. I did want to ask you, Prime Minister Carney was meeting with Trump in the Oval Office. I was a little bit surprised, or were you a little bit surprised, that supply management didn't seem to come up at all in the White House meeting? And I'm a little surprised because it has been a point with Trump talking about we can't get our dairy in. He's got lots of points to make, but it never even came up. I thought that was
openly, publicly, yeah.
Publicly, but I thought that was kind of I don't know. Should we take that as a positive sign? I mean, the meeting was like, what do you get out of that meeting? Well, you didn't get a fight, and we look fine, right? You didn't get Zelensky'd, and it kind of went.
Zelensky'd.
These things can go because it's it can trip over kind of.
Yeah, that meeting was brutal.
But I thought it was a positive sign in terms of the relations between the countries that particularly didn't get brought up, because that will put Prime Minister Carney into a tough spot sitting in the White House room and talking about supply management, right?
Oh, of course. I wasn't expecting it to be mentioned in the Oval Office during a 35-minute presser, to be honest, because there's so much to cover. There was, of course,
it's so random, though. It's so random, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, out of 35 minutes, President Trump spoke 32 minutes. So, I mean, it's telling. And frankly, I actually do think that the Prime Minister actually handled the situation quite well. I mean, despite the bombastic style that President Trump has, and the unpredictability of his approach to some of these meetings, I do think that Prime Minister Carney rolled with the punches quite well. But I wasn't expecting supply management to be mentioned, but I do think it's still on the table, very much so, and perhaps it may have been discussed before or after the meeting with other officials, because he wasn't, of course, Prime Minister partner with it was with his entourage, and there were meetings afterwards, and but I do think that absolutely, supply management is going to be a target. It's an easy target for America. So and that's why I did write an op-ed this week, basically making a plea to the dairy sector before you get slaughtered again, no pun, you may want to think about your future here. I mean, you may want to think about a different system instead of just conceding and get a check, because that's what's going to happen right now. We can all see the writing is on the wall. We'll concede more. We'll actually grant Americans more market access and to Mexicans as well. We'll write a check to dairy farmers, and supply management will weaken yet again.
Well, I don't want to belabor that point because you've got a nice, great discussion with Gilles. You don't talk per se about supply management, but it's a really good insight. I've listened to it.
We did mention one thing, and I actually appreciate Gilles' acknowledgement. By 2030, the world will be short. We actually will not have enough milk and butter fat. In fact, the shortfall will be about 3 times the national production, Canada's national yearly production. 3 times.
Doesn't that sound like an opportunity to you for the dairy?
That's exactly what I ask. I mean, because of supply management, we have zero chance of taking advantage of that opportunity abroad. And I did say to Gilles, listen, I think this isn't it a missed opportunity. He acknowledged it. He absolutely agreed.
It's a great interview. Speaking of which, let's get right to it. We're going to hear a few great words from our presenting sponsor, Cattle, and then we're going to get to our great interview, your great interview, my friend, with Gilles Froment from both Lactalis and the IDF. Does your digital customer engagement strategy need a serious upgrade? Enter Cattle, Canada's consumer insights powerhouse with the largest, most active panel of everyday shoppers. They're not your typical sponsor. They're the voice of the consumer, always in the know on the hottest trends and shaping what's next. So why Cattle? They go beyond consumer insights. They're trailblazing the future of ratings and reviews and leading the charge in user-generated content. With unmatched syndicated receipt data and the ability to gather reviews across any category, Cattle partners with giants like Walmart and Canadian Tire to deliver results that count. Visit askcattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's askcattle.com.
Well, welcome back to Ciel Canada. We have a special guest today from the dairy sector. We have very few guests in the dairy sector, but this is the guest that we want. His name is Gilles Froment. He has quite a few titles. First of all, he's the dairy expert at Ciel. But most importantly, you are the president of the International Dairy Federation and also senior vice president of governmental affairs at Lactalis. So you know your stuff. Gilles, welcome to the Food Professor podcast.
Thank you very much.
So I guess, first of all, dairy is a big deal. Dairy is a huge portion of people's diets. It's a huge portion of the food industry. So And you're the go-to person. So tell us about you. How did you become the person you are today, I guess? In about, 2 minutes.
It's very interesting. Listen, I grew up on a farm, just like you.
And where's that?
Saint-Paul-de-Joliette.
Oh, my
on
God.
the North Shore.
Okay.
On the Chemin Froment.
Yes.
So the land
and
is...
Chemin Froment is related
Yeah, of course, from my grandfather, my great-grandfather.
Okay.
We had the mixed farm, to make a long story short, never had any cows at home. Partly because when my father bought the farm in 1967, his sister was taking care of the 18 dairy Ayrshire herd that they had, but he didn't like the cows.
Ayrshire, okay.
Yeah, so that's the first thing he did is he got rid of the cows. So I never saw a cow at home. I've milked cows, with my uncles and stuff, but never at home. So I grew up in that, and then there was we had chicken, we had hogs, we had 3,000 hogs finishing operation. And there was a big chicken farm not far from my place. And I ended up working there in the summer, and I ended up at university. I did an undergrad in economics. And
that's at Laval, right?
No, I did it in Montreal.
Montreal,
and I did my grad school at McGill at McDonald in ag economics.
Okay.
And then I had a professor, Dr. Gart Coffin. He passed a few years ago, unfortunately, but he was he took me under his wing, so to speak.
I've met Dr. Coffin, actually.
And he was very, very interested in supply management, and I had my experience on the chicken side. So I said, I'll work with you on that. So that's how I started getting the interest. And I guess that's how I got on the policy side. Right. And I got, so I went early on in my career, I worked for agriculture in Montreal and the grain sector. That was my thesis. But my first real job, so to speak, was with the turkey farmers here in
Right.
Mississauga.
Right.
And then I ended up with the Dairy Commission in Ottawa in '97, and
That's
I was
right.
there. I was there for almost 20 years, so it's amazing how time flies.
How did you find your experience at the CDC?
It was a good experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I started as a market analyst, and I've touched pretty much all the role. So when I left as a COO, I was kind of in charge of the whole operation of the business. And I would say that the challenges that we were facing, 20 years before versus the challenge versus the discussion has basically not evolved that much. You know?
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same debate always. And anyway, and all that to say that I ended up at some point with an offer from the formerly Parmalat Canada, which
Yes.
is Lactalis Canada now.
So you left CDC for
I left
the private sector?
I quit the government, and people were calling me.
I gotta tell
Are you
ya."
crazy? leaving a pension from federal government? But I did.
It's a change of beat.
It's a complete change
Oh,
of
yeah.
beat. But because I had the farming experience, because I had government experience,
It's very rare.
I wanted the business experience.
Yeah.
And that business experience, I've been there now for 9 years. It's been a tremendous journey. It's a great company to work with.
Yeah.
So, of course, my role at IDF, maybe in a minute as well. IDF, the International Dairy Federation, or Fédération Internationale du Lait.
Yeah.
It's an organization I know well. I started getting involved.
Well, what's the role of the IDF?
The role of the IDF is really to lead the science that's behind dairy in all the sectors. So food safety, sustainability.
At farm gate only, or just the entire supply chain?
The whole
Okay.
supply chain. The
From
whole supply
farm
chain.
gate to plate. Okay.
Yeah, and IDF is about 40 countries. Canada is we're not a huge country in terms of milk production globally, but we play a very big role at IDF. And IDF is an organization where it's not Lactalis or Dairy Farmers of Canada that's a member. It's IDF Canada. It's Phil IDF Canada. So we have
Okay.
a national committee, which I've been leading since 2007, which is the member at the international level. And that group...
Who's on the board of IDF Canada?
Essentially, you have dairy farmers, dairy processors,
The
government,
entire supply chain. Okay.
provincial, federal
Right.
government. We have universities. We have research institution. We have we have the whole group. So anyway,
Well, it's just very science-focused.
very
organization.
science, and it's really the voice of the global dairy sector globally.
Okay.
But with a structure and it's all volunteer. Everybody
Really?
that works at IDF, everything is done volunteer.
And there's staff, right? No.
Yeah, there's staff. We pay a membership, of course. Canada
So when you
pays
say
a membership.
science, it doesn't fund science?
It doesn't really fund science. It's so the science is made by university and stakeholder that are willing to work and put their
So
time.
I guess it's a network of knowledge.
It's a network of knowledge.
Okay,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And there's a lot of publication. So I would encourage you to go to the website. Some are for sale, that you get a bit of
generate
revenue.
revenues, yeah.
But a lot of them are free as well.
Okay.
So I ended up, it's an organization, like I said, I know for more than 20 years that I've been involved. My main involvement, because of my background, has been with, there's a standing committee called Standing Committee Dairy Policies and Economics. So I've been the rep for Canada since 2004. And in 2014, I became chair of that committee for 6 years. And then one thing lead to another. They said, are you interested in a position on the board? So I got on the board from 2020 during COVID until 24. I was also treasurer. And then 2 years ago, they said, well, you would be a very good candidate, for president. And I said, wow, I'm not, I don't have time to do that, and so on.
Even if it's voluntary, it's probably quite time-consuming.
It takes quite a bit of time, and I like.
Now,
to
are you
say-
the first Canadian to have that position?
No. There's been 2 Canadian before. One in the 60s. He was actually a guy that I never met, but he was working at the Dairy Commission at the time.
Okay.
And the other one was Richard Doyle, more recently.
Richard Doyle, yes.
The ex-CEO of
Right.
DFC
Yeah.
from 2008 to 2012.
Yeah, it's quite recent, yeah.
So we're 3 Canadian presidents in 120 years of existence.
So talk to us about, because of course there's lots of discussion about dairy in Canada. But there's a little discussion about dairy, Canadian dairy around the world and its reputation. So being involved with IDF, how is Canadian dairy perceived? And what I mean by that, the quality, the reliance, the science to support our farmers here. How is all that perceived internationally?
Yeah. Well, the IDF, to use the acronym, usually work, and you were asking, what do you do and what's your mission? Typically, we don't work in the competitive side. So when you get to trade, when you get to price, when you get to those things, it's usually, so you work more, what standard you want to develop to, for quality, safety, sustainability, animal welfare, and so on, animal science, on how do you best position the dairy sector globally. Yep. And Canada has a network of, I was talking about Phil IDF Canada. We have a network of over 100 people contributing to IDF. So and globally it's about 1,000 to 1,200.
Oh my God.
So we are punching well above our weight for the size of our business.
Right.
And we have a lot of good expert in various fields, whether it's method of analysis or,
So would you say that the world relies on Canadian science to better understand what should be the quality benchmarks out there, or?
Well, we have very high quality benchmark, and I know that because I work for Lactalis, where we're in 52 countries, and I can tell you that Canada is by far, one of the top quality in terms of the raw milk quality, and in terms of
it's reliable.
It's reliable, and so on.
Yeah.
And but when you look at Canada, I think it's really, I was saying it's volunteer, so it's really the availability of our people and the interest of our people to get involved and to try to make a difference in the global sector. I cannot say that people rely on Canada to establish a standard because we work together and we work by consensus. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, you're not there to push a file, we want this, like, supply management,
right.
You don't go and push supply management at IDF. That's not the forum
There's no
whatsoever.
lobbying going on.
No, that's not the objective. There's lobbying for dairy terms, for codex term. Dairy term is very important now because, we hear about, plant-based, we hear about lab cell-based product and so on.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody working in the dairy industry has any problem with those products. They service a market to consumer. The problem is when they borrow the name of dairy.
Yeah.
That becomes if you want to call this product a milk or cheese, I have to say I have a huge problem with that. Yeah. And Europe is very strong on that. Canada is in between because...
But this is the one thing you're seeing right now around the world, the nomenclature, the battle, and so it's all over the world, really.
Yeah, pretty much all over. The strictest rule are probably in Europe still. They have kept. U.S., I'm going to say they have lost the battle in certain ways. And in Canada,
really, even if you look at, say, Texas or Florida,
you can call it oat
whatever
milk or whatever, which doesn't fit in my head together. But
no, there's no udders on almonds.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Nut milk.
So we are, we are there to defend. In Canada, it's a little bit in between. You're not.
What do you expect?
You're not allowed, but if you put a qualifier in front, it's going to be tolerated. So this is the challenge we have moving forward: is how do we keep. And I don't blame those other sectors for borrowing those terms, because.
It sells.
It sells.
And so the industry basically sees consumer confusion as a threat.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I guess so. In Canada, do you think that we're vulnerable to what's happening around the world? Do you think that policy, legislation, will actually favor consumer confusion eventually? Do you see that with the new government over time? Do you think that dairy is bound? Because we know that now with the new food guide, milk is no longer the drink of choice. you can see some of the writing is on the wall. Is the IDF concerned about that?
There is a concern. There's a big concern amongst many countries. I would say most countries. I mean, I don't think it reflects what consumers are eating now.
I would argue that it doesn't reflect what Canada grows and produces.
No.
It's not necessarily. I mean, from a nutritional perspective, there is some scientific basis to the food guide, but it's not necessarily Canadian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we haven't, to my knowledge, we see a healthy growth. I mean, you see that as well, but the growth in, most product we see, we've seen that during COVID, of course, but milk has picked up, and there's still some good growth in milk.
Canadians
yogurt. We see yogurt culture. I was chairing a panel earlier. We were talking about cultured product, and it's the mix of our society too.
Right.
What they're looking for. They're cooking with dairy more and more. So there's nice opportunity.
What I'm hearing from this conversation is that policy is not necessarily influencing consumer behavior yet. Okay.
The big one with the food guide is, it's the institution, as you know, that are using that as a reference. So have the menus,
as you institutionalize the food guide,
so have the menu of the hospitals or the schools and so on change. I don't know. I haven't looked at it. 6 years after, it would be interesting to see if there's been an evolution there.
Yeah, absolutely. So other than this dialogue. I would say, I guess, plant-based versus animal. What else are you seeing on the horizon in terms of changes or challenges for the dairy industry, not just in Canada, but around the world?
I think one that we don't talk much is, and being an economist is something I follow very closely, but the global demand of dairy product is growing faster than the supply, which is very, very interesting. So even if
how do you explain that?
Even if you're talking, because there's a lot of countries, you look at, I was in China a few weeks ago, I've been to India, I've been to many places, and, you give more dollars, more money, more purchasing power, what do? They buy dairy. They buy milk, they buy cheese. Why? Because it's a very nutritive product. It's seen as, good and so on. So we see a lot of that. And, I was looking at just a number of weeks ago, the forecast from various organizations, whether it's IFCN or Rabobank or OECD and so on. And, they all have different forecasting model, but everybody predicts that in 2030, that's tomorrow, that's 5 years, less than 5 years down the road. In 2030, we'll be short of milk in the world to supply the dairy product by probably an equivalent of 1 to 2 to maybe 3 Canada equivalent production. So 10 to 30 billion liters of shortage. Of course, it could put pressure on prices, and we've seen it on the butter prices. We've seen it on various products. So,
I'm tempted to ask a question. Okay, so wouldn't this be an opportunity for Canada?
I think it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity.
Because right now with supply management, I'm sorry, we're immune to everything you're talking about. But wouldn't this be, given the reputation of Canada, which is excellent, wouldn't it be a great opportunity down the road?
There is an opportunity. Of course, we need to be more productive.
Because those numbers are massive.
We need to be more productive. We need to produce at the best costs possible.
Yeah.
The costs are higher in Canada than they are in New Zealand or in many or Africa or South America. There's no question there. But can we be competitive with the U.S.? Probably largely if we do the right thing. So, looking 5-10 years down the road, if we do things right, maybe there's opportunity. Well, and we have a huge landmass.
I know.
We have resources. We're not landlocked. We have a lot of potential.
There's so much potential. I agree with you.
And dairy could be one of them from my perspective.
Yeah.
But
So we're running out of time. I just want to tackle one last issue, which is climate change.
Yeah.
So I know it's impacting your industry. So I'm sure you're concerned about climate change. How is that impacting the dairy sector around the world, including Canada, of course? And what are some of the conversations you're having at the IDF or even at Lactalis? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, climate change is a huge. I mean, everybody talks about climate change, and as president of IDF, the way I see, when we talk about sustainability or ESG or CSR, there's various terminology, but essentially, the big picture sustainability, not just environment. I see 4 pillars. A lot of people see 3 pillars, but I see 4 pillars to that for the dairy sector, not for every sector. I see economic because, I've always said, it's hard to be green if you're in the red. So you need to be very, very economically sustainable.
Yeah.
And if you're not there, who has trouble? If you have trouble putting food on your table, you're not going to think about sustainability or recycling or food waste.
You have to survive.
Or whatever. You have to survive. Social is also very important, the social fabric and so on. We know it from farming. We know it from the people we employ. The dairy sector in the world employ more than 1 billion people. A lot of those are on farms, but a lot of them are on processing. And that doesn't count all the indirect job, from machineries and so on. 1 billion people.
That's a lot of people.
Earth that are linked to dairy production and dairy processing.
On Earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so economic, social, of course, environment, you cannot go beside it. The whole question of,
Carbon.
Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, and carbon emission, and for cows, methane emission is very, very top of mind.
And we know in Canada, the DFC actually has committed to net zero by 2040.
2050.
2050.
2050 with some...
And this is something we see around the world?
We see that around the world. Even my own company, Lactalis, the group has a commitment there with a milestone in 2030 and so on. So this is important, and I'll come back to that one. And the 4th one, in my view, for dairy is nutrition. Nutritional sustainability. Because you can tick all the box above, but if you produce a food that's empty, it doesn't, and dairy provides you your nutrition. So I would encourage a lot of people to measure, when you compare, a liter of milk with a liter of plant-based beverage or whatever, or other product, it shouldn't be measured on the weight or the volume. It should be measured on what it brings,
based on its nutritional value.
And all what it brings. And to me, it's very important because it goes for the health of population. Sometimes, if people are not fed properly, you feel it 5, 10, 20 years later, because
it takes time.
They were missing something or whatever. But I'll come back to your original question on sustainability, and probably it was more on the environment side. So, of course, we look at animal welfare, which is very important, but how do you decarbonize the dairy supply chain? And Scope 3, which comes from the farm, is the biggest challenge. Because in many areas of the world, Canada is no different, but, there's a few leaders in the world, it's not measured really. So it's very hard how do you improve something you don't measure? So in my view, we need a carbon balance on every dairy farm as soon as possible. That's going to give us the measure, and that's how we're going to be able to move towards a greener and show. Because I'm convinced that dairy is not the problem to climate change. It's part of the solution.
Yeah.
The other part of the equation where we need more...
And I guess it's the same battle for our cattle, the cattle industry, hogs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The other part that I think...
And do you, as president of IDF, do you actually interact with other vectors of the food economy, like cattle and hogs? They're fighting the same battle.
Absolutely. We work together. I was at COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, and one of my first trip as new president last fall, and I'll be at COP30 in Brazil this year.
Yeah.
And of course, we're grouped together. Like pretty much all panel, because the challenges are very similar.
Yeah, exactly.
You deal with animal production, but dairy has a bit better aura than red meat.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful. We have different line of production.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the same. It's similar. The other thing is that I wanted to say is we need more research and more work on carbon sequestration in the soil.
Yeah.
You know, because it will vary depending
Why
on
hasn't
the
it been a priority?
I think
from a scientific perspective, I
think it has not been, but it will. If it will become, in my view, if I would have to guess now, the next few years, that has to become one big priority. And you take, I mean, I was in South Africa as well, and there was a study from a professor. I mean, you know, you take.
We've been actually studying. I mean, I was actually in Saskatchewan when I started my career. They've been doing some research on carbon sequestration for a long time now.
Yeah.
3 decades.
Yeah. But, you know, the amount, so it will depends on, you know, how much moisture you get, what kind of tilling practices you have, the kind of crop you have. There's so many factors, and even the same crop, and even, I mean, you know, on a farm, I mean, you come from a farm, you have different type of soil, 100 acres, one type, and the sequestration will not be the same, even with the same crop.
No, absolutely.
So it will vary quite a bit, and so we need to do more, and of course, you know, the more land you have, like in Canada, the more you can offset, because the more you sequestrate in the soil, that offset quite a bit of that methane from dairy cows or beef cattle or whatever you have.
I've always believed that the carbon discussion in Canada has been very superficial. Like, we haven't really thought things through at the farm level. There are so many opportunities to decarbonize the economy.
Yeah.
Most of the discussion have been basically overwhelmed by taxation and fiscal measures.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
And usually it's not a good way. You're better to provide an incentive than a punitive tax.
In my world, we do have some carrots,
we see it with tariff now.
Exactly.
A punitive tariff is not stimulating your economy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same for carbon. It's the same for everything, in my view. So you need ways to incentive, whether it's the farming sector or whether it's processing or whatever, to make sure that you're putting the right thing. The other thing we're facing is, of course, the consumer demand are there. Our clients are asking, this specific SKU, can you tell me what is the carbon footprint of this block of cheese? I cannot tell them now.
That's right.
I know the plastic to the microgram I'm using. I know where it's coming from. I know what I'm using in terms of energy in the plant. But at the farm level, I mean, there's lots to do. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's a lot more to do in order to get to that point. And it's not going to happen over 2 or 3 years.
No.
It's going to be a long process. The other one that's very, very interesting in terms of emerging technology, if I may, is... I was at CEMEX before Christmas. CEMEX sell embryos and semen around the world.
Yeah. It's part of the food chain.
And it was amazing because they won an IDF award a couple of years ago for genetic selection for lower methane, which is very, very promising.
Wait a second. Genetic selection.
So you
for
select
lower
bull
methane?
that will over the generation, that will have cows that will emit less methane, which is fascinating. Of course, it's a very long process because you have some improvement at every generation.
We're talking about how much reduction here are we talking about?
If it would be adopted, I forget the number, but I think the study
It's significant?
It's very significant. Yeah, I think it could reduce by a third over 20 years or something like that.
Do you think consumers would be concern about some of the, because we've seen the debate about GMOs and
yeah, but there's nothing like GMOs there. It's
I know
it's just a breed.
But Jill, there's science and there are perceptions.
I know.
So do you think that consumers would be acceptable? Is there some social licensing there?
Maybe, but we saw the crisis with Bovaird, flaming up before Christmas in the UK.
This is ridiculous. I mean, it came out of it got approved, and I'm not sure why. Is anyone in Canada using it?
No, it's approved. It's approved in more than 150 countries, if I recall, including Canada. To my knowledge, it's not used in Canada.
I don't know if you looked at social media, but there was a bit of an uproar.
It's used in Europe, and I'm going to say Denmark is one of the first country to put that mandatory, that farmers will have to feed Bovaird to use the brand, but there's other, but I think Bovaird...
Has IDF taken a position about this?
Well, we are careful about it because of exactly that, what you're mentioning, the consumer perception, what does it mean? But scientifically, and I know when you get to social media, the science doesn't really matter in a way. But scientifically, it's,
But I haven't been able to find any studies looking at the quality. So it doesn't impact the animal. But is there any studies?
Yeah, I think there is, and I could probably find that for you.
So the quality of the product wouldn't be impacted?
Yeah, it doesn't affect the quality of the product.
Meat or
the taste or the composition of the product and so on.
Okay.
But then there is still that aura that in Canada you were asking if it's used. I don't know the short answer, but I would venture to say no.
Because I did ask the question to DFC, and they told their answer wasn't really clear, because I don't think they actually knew 100%.
But my view is if it's used, I would say no probably. If it's used, it would be very small.
Very small.
Because simply why? Because there's no incentive to use it.
No.
So it costs something like $100 per cow per year, $100 US a cow per year to add to the ration. So if you have 100 cow milking cow, that's $10,000.
That's a lot.
It's a lot if you don't have the benefit of it. So you're not going to do it. So I think there's a lot of technology that are coming. I know there's research on vaccine to reduce emission. There's all sorts of things, and what's going to be the consumer acceptance is the question.
Yeah.
But we know in dairy product, we want a short ingredient list, as clean as possible, and that's
labeling is going to be
that's
a
what
big
we
key
do.
for sure.
And I think it's more and more key for consumers.
Listen, Jill, we're going to have to leave it there because we're over half an hour, my God. Typically, it's like 15, 20 minutes, so we're way over time, but it was really an interesting conversation. Thank you very much for joining us, Gilles Froment from the International Dairy Federation, and also Senior Vice President at Lactalis, Senior Vice President, Global Affairs or Government Affairs, and also at Cial, Dairy Expert. I don't know when you sleep, but I guess you'll be sleeping sometime. Thank you very much for joining us, Jill.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we are back. Couple of quick things. Did you see that we have a GLP-1 casualty? Weight Watchers has declared that they're going into protection into bankruptcy. And they called out, we've talked about Weight Watchers and how they're trying to adapt to the way that people are losing weight. And they said, listen, we came up with our own private label thing, but we can't continue our business model. So many people are losing weight so often with these drugs that we mark that up as another casualty, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So they obviously they couldn't right size the organization on time. No pun.
Well, it's the whole business model. I like what you did there. I mean, the whole business model is those meetings and everything, but if you can just take a shot in the leg.
But I mean, it was, again, back in, you remember February 2024 when Oprah basically quit the board? That was done. It was over. I think everyone knew it was over for them, for sure.
All right, last thing. Would you, Sylvain, like to have breakfast with Ryan Reynolds? You can do that now. Thanks to Tim Hortons. Well, each one of us can have breakfast with Ryan Reynolds because it's a Ryan Reynolds product that Tim Hortons is selling, and it's a combination.
Oh, okay, I got it.
I saw the big billboard today. It's breakfast with Ryan Reynolds, and boy, it's an interesting move to many are big fans of Ryan. He's seen as very Canadian.
He's a very popular actor. I don't know if I see the synergy here between the brand Tim Hortons and Ryan Reynolds. Do you see something? Am I missing something here?
Well, A, he's Canadian, and B, he's charismatic, and C, he's got a big track record of proving that he can sell stuff.
Tim Hortons is Brazilian, man.
Well, let's not get too deep into that. I think as a brand, it helps.
I know
the ownership versus the brand. Anyway,
full disclosure, I was skeptical with Bieber, to be honest, and it worked for them. So maybe it will work for. It will. I mean, I think the idea for Tim Hortons is to actually attract a different demographic. What kind of demographic would you attract with Ryan Reynolds, you think?
That would be, I would think, younger women, which is clearly
women.
where they're looking.
When's the last time you went to Tim Hortons?
Well, I have an amazing coffee machine at home. So truth be told, I don't go get coffee anywhere. So it's been literally.
So you're a younger woman.
I'm going to try that breakfast. I want to try that breakfast. Well, listen.
But I mean, I've been to Tim Hortons a few times in the last 6 months, and I didn't see a whole lot of young women.
Well, there you go. Shout out. We wish him the best of luck. And I guess Ryan Reynolds next, he'll be doing farm.
Because I actually posted something on X about this, and Ryan Reynolds was destroyed. But when you look at people commenting, they were all guys.
Yeah. I was going to say that X
ugly
community.
Guys, probably.
Yeah, that X community is a whole different set of.
They're all ugly.
I don't think they're
Ryan Reynolds rocks. I mean, I'm sorry.
I like him.
I think he's a great ambassador to Canada. He's a great guy. He's witty. It's going to be great. Yeah, I do think it's going to work. It's just, I don't know if it's actually going to bring more business to Tim Hortons as a result.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't be investing the kind of money they're needing to pay that fella if they didn't have a pretty good sense with some metrics. But we wish him the best of luck. Let's see how it goes.
Well, knowing Ryan Reynolds, I suspect that he's probably using that money and he's giving it to charity or something.
I'd like to see a Sylvain Charlebois lunch. That's what I'd like to see. Maybe some poutine. Sylvain Charlebois poutine.
French vanilla.
All right. Well, let's fun episode. Great interview, Sylvain, and let's leave it there. I'm Michael LeBlanc, media baron in the making, keynote speaker, and you are?
And I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care, and for down south, howdy.